Uh, First of all, it's really a great pleasure and honor to have two senior and seasoned board members join us for this talk show today. Ms. Basu, she represents almost three plus years, decades of experience from the area of marketing, strategy, and sustainability. And Mr. George possibly brings in nearly 4 decades of experience across banking, financial services, manufacturing, basically from a finance side, and then general management strategy and sustainability and ESG. So we are really very honored to have such a panel today to discuss on this topic and help us understand what is really happening in the corporate boards in terms of ESG and sustainability. So the first question which I want to put up to both of you, possibly I'll request Mr. George to respond first, and then I'm sure Ms. Basu also will come into the picture. As students, serious students of ESG and sustainability, if you want to understand the history and how the whole sustainability wave has caught on to corporate world, corporate boards, corporate India, I think most of us will say that it is from the COVID pandemic when we faced somewhere from the year 2021. I think the issue of sustainability became a big issue for us, and we all realized that when this kind of a disaster strikes us, then we are all together in this journey. There is no difference between rich and poor, or this sector and that sector, or cement or finance, whatever. We are all in this together. And we are all in this together as a planet. It doesn't really matter then to say that who started it and who was responsible and all that stuff. So in India, if you look at the journey, I think most of us got conscious about ESG from the year about 2021. But this is what I'm saying is what we understand outside the corporate board. Our aim today is to understand that inside the corporate board, how and when this ESG journey has started. I will request Mr. George first to throw light on this, and then Madhumita will come into the picture. And when you respond, I'm saying to both of you, you need not limit it to the experience of your company. You can talk about your besides your company, your sector. If you have been into multiple sectors, bring examples from that side. And you talk about corporate world in general, because I am sure your friends, your professionals, they are all spread out in different corporate boards across the sector. So coming back to Mr. George, we would love to know from you that when did this ESG buzzword really get into the corporate boardrooms?
I agree with you. It is in the corporate boardroom, it has really become a topic of conversation regularly around 18, 19, 20 time. And then, COVID time, it naturally got strengthened. But before I get into this, let me tell you, these three words to me doesn't matter much.
Right.
This is a way of life for corporate world and individuals. So if you really look at, they have formulated a method to monitor, etc. Let me tell about my story in this journey.
Right. Yeah.
Much before we heard about EOS or G, as you know, when we met each other,
Right.
I was with Aruna Sugars.
Right.
Aruna Sugars, I was in Banjara Hill in Taj one evening on the eve of Independence Day.
Okay.
And I was listening to, I think, India Today TV channel. Rajmohan Gandhi was talking on the pre-independence talk. Very inspiring, motivating. He said, please look at what you have done to the country, to the common man. You are all in positions. All of us should try to to something, which is good for the community, society. How do you rate you as a professional in that angle? It opened my eyes. I never looked at my career growth anyway linked to that. So that evening I was thinking, what can I do? So it's very interesting. Suddenly I realized for Aruna Sugars, the cane growers are in villages, near Trichy, you know that place.
Right.
They don't have electricity there. So most of them were using kerosene and, other fuels. So I was thinking how to get them power.
Oh,
Suddenly, that was the time when in the late 90s, the time when solar was getting little prominence, and then IRADA as an organization, central
right.
government formulated. Suddenly it came to me in the night, can I do something to give power to these people? And then the thought led me, if I am able to get a solar power generating system, and
Right.
with the lamps to be also to be given to these villages, night they can have power, their children can study. Little more deep thinking made me creative, and I felt the battery, the charger can be in the shape of a tree. Why not we have a tree in the common area? And all these lamps, these people can bring in the morning, put it there, evening take it home, full night they will have power. So the cost will come down. So the central charger we will finance some way. And those days, this you will remember differential rate of interest scheme 4%.
Right.
So get it for the farmers. We become the nodal agency.
Right.
There was subsidy coming in. It was a beautiful scheme in paper. And then I approached some of the top companies. I'm not mentioning names here.
Right.
That is not relevant.
Correct.
The top equipment suppliers, and
Correct.
we tied up. They were excited. But to cut the whole story short, after the pilot phase, it didn't take off. The reason is, and it is very relevant today for all of us to understand, solar power generation, one of the biggest challenges India has faced till recently is the quality of the capital equipments we supply. You look at the solar heater you install in your home or in your factory. After 2-3 years, when you have to repair, that supplier is not there. You throw away the whole thing. It is happening. I am seeing it even happening regularly. So this scheme didn't take off. What a noble scheme it was in paper. So this is one address. See, when we talk about this, solar energy is India's one of the most, I will say wind and solar are two power things that can come to us. But the most important thing is ensuring quality vendors, and there should be an accountability for them, so that consumers are not taken for a ride. First point I want to tell. So this is one thing which is very, seriously it has to be addressed. We have few companies who have come in on depreciation thing. They made lot of importance of sold. Today it is not there. So I think a pakka policy regulatory framework on capital supply of equipment is very crucial for this. So this was my beginning of my personal journey without even knowing about ESG in the ESG space. Coming to corporate world also, I think all good companies, what is essentially ESG? To me, my mind, it is about, this planet we are on lease for our lifetime. It has to be handed over to the next generation. We got it from our forefathers. So what is the point? We should pollute it to the minimum. We should exploit it to the optimum level. So which means consumption has to be controlled. Today's corporate world, you look at, now I'm little moving away because I think we have to go to the core of the subject. It's so deep, so complex. Now, we are promoting consumption, no? I think whichever product, you see the number of products available. We are spoiled for choices, anything, no? And how much waste you are seeing in all those nice shopping malls all over the country. Imagine the kind of inventories that we are producing and throwing it away. This is generating waste. And we are seeing, sorry, Madhumita, the marketing area has said, how can we reduce the life of the product so that, resale will happen? I'm talking
Right, right.
car batteries and no, because I think we should be having
Yeah,
honest conversation. We're very
correct.
honest. Then only the listeners will have. It will be a
No,
different.
in fact, sir, why car battery?
Yeah,
For my shoes also. When
exactly.
I was
Shoes
a
I'm
child,
coming
I will buy a shoe for 5 years. Now, not even 5 months.
5 months.
And that
Exactly.
price is 10 times of the old ones.
Okay. Next point, FMCG. I loved that to meet Madhumita, have a personal chat later. See,
Right.
you look at today, you have a good consumer product. Finally, you have that you buy a particular shoe and you say, "Oh, this is my one aha moment." Can you get that after 1 year? No. Another innovation comes. So the whole point is the whole world. It is not a problem because they are under pressure to do things. When
Correct.
the sake of innovation, how much we are wasting? Some of them are total.
Correct.
So I think this has to be a mindset. This resource utilization, corporate should move just from their individual corporate target achieving and marketing. Are we really adding value to the community, to the society? Otherwise, no, we should keep with our things in better quality. In the so-called incrementation, that plus, Colgate plus or Colinos plus kind of a thing. How much are we wasting? This is a serious. I am at a
Right, right, right.
back end of my life, looking at the world. I think we have to look at. We are a poor country. We have to conserve resources. Number one point. And if you look at ESG, good boards have started looking at much before these words were without knowing this.
Correct.
It is a way of
True,
life.
true.
So that
Correct.
many boards have done it. I have seen olden days also. But recently it has been more formalized into this kind
Correct.
of setup.
Correct. Correct.
If you ask me, the most important task in this, if you are to prioritize, energy consumption is to me the number one item. If you are asked to prioritize, energy consumption is the number one item. Now, I do not know, some of you may be sure aware, but many of you may not be knowing. When we use ChatGPT, the latest AI tool, just to generate a message, the kind of energy, both power and water, is wasted is tremendous. We will be shocked. But that is all being done without our knowledge. We are getting into some private equity, venture capitalists are funding it abroad. But the actual consumption is horrible. It is dirty. The kind of. So most of this, we think it is very, very clean. It is not clean. It is consuming a lot of energy and power. And in energy consumption also, very clear, developed world and developing world, there is always a bargain. No? We will do this, the latest summit, where developed countries were not willing to pledge more money. When we look at the irony, the per capita consumption of coal, or CO2 generated, for Indians are very, very low compared to the Western world. And they think we are very polluted, but it is, otherwise people will not eat. The way there consumption goes on a different level. So it has to need a global leadership and address. I think I will continue further, otherwise it will be a
Yeah,
one-way
I
talk.
think I was just coming to that. I think for the
Yeah.
moment, I'll request you just to hold on. And yeah, Ms. Basu, I bring
Yes.
into you. Okay. So in your understanding, I mean, you have seen quite a bit of the sectors, your cement, consumer products, and batteries and all. Although you may not have been on the board for so long, but I'm sure when the dockets for the boards are prepared, it is people like you only who have been preparing that. So what is your view? This whole concept of this ESG wave, which has now caught on to the corporate board. From when do you think it has really started
Yeah.
getting in? Yeah.
Am I audible?
Yes, yes, yes. Yes.
Yeah, I think we lost signal for a moment. So, firstly, Professor, thank you for inviting me to this panel. With the tone Mr. George has set, I see some interesting conversation going ahead.
Right,
but on a lighter note, I'd like to compliment you. At least you got the ESG right on this first panel with very good gender diversity.
Yeah.
Near perfect. Yeah,
Right.
so returning to your question, and I'll be a little quick on this one because there are more
Right.
questions to move ahead.
Sure.
I would push the date back a little more. Not, I wouldn't call it really a COVID-related
Right.
event. I'd go a little backwards to say 2012, when
Yes.
SDGs were first formulated. There are
Right.
many organizations which took to SDG mapping and at least reviewing and reporting their progress even before BRSR reporting was formalized.
Right.
What we are seeing today is because of the formal structure set around ESG, we are seeing a lot more. The progress in itself is more visible to us. So numbers can be set on how many companies are doing the ESG reporting and all. But really, I like one aspect which Mr. George brought. You know, it is also the social will. And in India, I would say, where we come with organizations like Tatas and Birlas, not now, but in 30s, 40s, and 50s of the last century, were setting out social goals.
Correct.
And working on them, working very actively on them. So yes, it's got momentum, but the momentum is more related to the sense of formality that's coming and the responsibility which is being put on boards to ensure that organizations are having a good, reasonable agenda and reviewing the progress of that agenda.
Right. In fact, you know, like I was trying to do some background work on this before we came for the show, and you know, theoretically, if you look at you know the CSR coming into Indian you know platform from 2013-14, and before that also, if you see the national guideline for voluntary business research, NGRBC guidelines, best practices and all, coming from 2011 or something like that. You know, I was looking at some of the government policies and the notes which came out during that time. And the whole concept of circularity and all, it was even part of that guidelines, you know. Now, you know, I'm not very sure how many of us have actually been looking at those circularity challenges, thoughts, thought process which the government had been talking about from 2010-11. You know, we are waking up only now. Now, my question is actually as a linkage, I'm getting it. Many a times when we are outside the corporates or the corporate boards, being professors and all in a business school, we are cut off from the reality. Okay. And that is one of my pet views that business schools are lagging behind the corporates by almost a decade. Both of you being from the corporate world, do you think that although we may not have been using the word ESG, and although the philanthropy and the social side of doing business has been part of our DNA right for centuries, but some of the fundamental concepts of ESG, that is the concept of circularity, which I am talking about, uh, had been there for a long time on which corporates actually had been working. I mean, if I talk about power and solar, obviously, I think for our last 20-25 years, we have been working. And while wind took over and then we were waiting how the cost of solar will start coming down. And we all were waiting till that time and what we are seeing now. But the other areas, if I go beyond, like suppose, because reducing consumption of raw material and circularity comes really very hand in hand, you know. So do you think that a lot of work actually had been happening before? Yeah.
I'm like really tempted to take you on this, you know, with a very loud yes. I started my career with Excite. They were into lead acid batteries. And way back in 95, 96, you know, exports used to be allowed from neighboring countries. And I recall this moment of strategic discussion in the organization. When we said, why should we fight to stop imports? Instead, 80% of lead can be recycled from used batteries into new batteries. Why not let us talk with the government encourage the local industry to bring back old batteries and have their own efficient smelting facilities. Prior to that, as you know, roadside smelting of lead used to take place, highly polluting item. So one thing, Doctor, I do believe that a trigger for all this has to come from somewhere. There has to be a cause. Sometimes the cause is government-led, like in regulations. Sometimes there is a strong commercial cause for an organization. And I think, you know, and as a response to your question, there cannot be a better example that a good cause in many organizations has driven circularity, environmental consciousness long before it became a legal necessity.
Right. In fact, this is such a topic on which we can only discuss on this and the whole program can finish off. But you know, we just want to move ahead. A thought which is linked from here, which I throw to both of you, and possibly Madhumita can answer, then we can pass it on to Mr. George. That when we talk about ESG, while you know in our DNA philanthropy had been there and all the other things that we are saying, but one of the key things which come in is the movement from the thought of shareholder to stakeholder, which to me is a big transition in mindset. We might be doing philanthropy. We might be not used to spending much more in the pre-90 days, and then we wanted a choice and options. But this transition supposedly from shareholder to stakeholder, is this something, do you think, which is new into the thinking of the boardrooms, or this was also there and nothing new into this?
Not really, you know, the trigger points, as I was saying, has come for different organizations and different industries from different areas. So as I was saying, if there is a cause for driving ESG, that cause has to be government-led, or has to be competition-led, or has to be customer-led.
Right.
So when we say that driving the thought of ESG from shareholders, which I would see is more to do with the governance aspect, looking at ESG compliance from a financing aspect, more the financial realities around the shareholders to other stakeholders. So at the other extreme, let's take a consumer. A consumer driving and ESG requirement can only come if there is a lot of environmental discomfort to me.
Right.
Mr. George was talking about consumerism.
Correct.
For me, as a consumer, I am first looking at ease of consumption.
Right.
Unless the consumption or the disposal of that item is worrying me from my own environmental safe space.
Correct.
So these will have to come together. They will have to converge at a point. And very definitely, I was on a panel recently with a lady from pharma sector. And she mentions that very nicely she put it, that today we are in a conference and we are all sitting after a good meal. Suppose every dish on that table was a millet dish. Would you come back resplendent and say, I enjoyed the meal?
Right.
So there is a lot that needs to fall in place before all stakeholders can be comprehensively included. But where one is seeing the shift, and it just with a few words, I'll wrap it up. Where one is seeing the shift in the boardroom is definitely questions being raised about employees, about compensations, fair pay, gender diversity. So definitely an employee aspect one is seeing clearly come into the boardroom discussion. Today, any simple governance would cover your posh cases, your whistleblower cases. Right. So stakeholders are coming into this conversation by the topic we are picking up to discuss.
Right. Yeah, Mr. George, if we can get you back, shareholder to stakeholders. Shareholder to stakeholders. Has that migration really happened, or it is just for the sake of talking we are saying all this?
No, it is happening. And I think Madhumita, after her, I have nothing much to add. She has beautifully explained the whole conversation. Today, boardroom, it is discussions are specifically on this. Independent directors raise issues, provided you have good board composition. These are the things they will be looking at. The ESG committee chair will sit on the previous day, specifically look at each segment. And in my personal experience, in one of the boards we are there is a SEBI mandated committee, shareholder relations committee. The board was changed the name to Stakeholder Relations Committee. They said, no, we will say, let us do something more. Okay.
Correct.
And it is not only the name change. They suggested to me that why don't we get stakeholder representatives from each set of stakeholders for one meeting to address for 10 minutes. Okay. So our attribute explain the internal customers, whether it is the people who are managing materials, they will come to the board. Now the sourcing, how they are looking at the ESG aspects, and whether the vendors comply with this. These kind of things, board spend time. So each stakeholder representative will come for each board meeting for 10-15 minutes apart from normal. So it has become a very stakeholder thing has come in very seriously, as you mentioned.
Okay, great.
Of course, the impact of this and the extent will be depending on circumstances, as she beautifully said. A commercial consideration will be number one priority.
Great. I think with that, we just move to the next theme linked to this. Now that we have known that ESG is firmly into the corporate board, and it is nothing new for us in that way. And we have moved to the concept of stakeholders from shareholders. The issue is that who in the board is actually driving the ESG agenda? I think we might have lost Madhumita for a moment. I don't know, but we can carry on. The issue is that there are some boards where you have an ESG committee, but I think that is very handful as of now. In most cases, you have a CSR committee, possibly through that only ESG things are being run. In many places, I think, I'm not very sure, it is the entire board who is possibly driving the ESG issues in the organization. And the fact that ESG means 3 elements of E, S, and G, there are possibly each board member who is in charge of one of the elements, or maybe at two of them in one element, and they are looking at the overall management of it. So the question comes that who in the board is driving the ESG agenda? Mr. George, we start with you.
Okay. So to me, the most effective one is for the chairman to drive the agenda. Okay. Because the reasons I will tell you, the challenge is between long-term versus short-term. In the case of management, they have to achieve the quarter-to-quarter targets, they are under pressure. So many a time that focus can dilute the ESG focus. So there will be an essential conflict somewhere coming in. So if it is from the chairman level, it is the most effective. Now, if the chairman technically, for me, chairman should be the chairman of the ESG thing, and the whole board should be responsible. The problem with you delegating one fellow E, one fellow S, and one fellow G, They will come in and the board may not buy in. By the time management may dilute the thing. So it has to be top driven if you have to become. And that should be a nice confluence of short term versus long term. That has to. Having said this, there are certain companies which have ESG committee, certain things about CSR, but CSR committees are functioning totally separately. I tell you that 2% what the profit has to go in a year, their hands are full. If you have to really spend that 2%, you have to evaluate whom you are giving. You have to have an impact study of that. Then you submit it to the board, monitor it. So we should, the ideal thing would be from top. The chairman should get this one, and then the promoters and the whole board should take it forward. That is my suggestion. That's what we are doing. I am doing personally, and I think that's the most effective way to do.
Yeah, but if you go beyond your company,
knowing the fact, I tell you, I am independent director in 3 other companies. Okay. One company I am not mentioning. One of them, we have a very nice consultant who will prepare all reports and the reports will come for reviews, etc. So it is only satisfying the regulatory essential. They spend considerable time. No, it varies. It varies from company to company. Again, depends on the mindset of the people coming in. But regulations are really helping. Now, what is going to happen is, one more point and I will pass on to.
Correct.
As she mentioned, today I was in a IMD board meeting last week. I was in Switzerland. Now, there are specific bonds which will come. You were in rating CRISIL earlier. So bonds with specific very low interest rate, even zero coupon interest rate. Bonds are available for us to implement ESG initiatives. So then, there are special agencies which are doing exclusively ESG rating apart from our traditional rating agencies. These are all, as Madhumita beautifully said, is bringing a kind of commercial aspect also to the whole initiative. So I am getting zero interest, and then it becomes all the more viable. So these things will pressurize us to do more and more and more in this area. Back to you.
Yeah, Ms. Basu, I mean, what we were trying to understand is that who is driving the ESG agenda at the board level?
Yes, Doctor, I got the flavor. I mean, Mr. Joss was very comprehensive. I'd just like to add one thing, definitely no questions. You have to have this top driven. For me, a necessary trigger for driving this whole thing, or a manner for driving this whole thing, is to evidence company strategic action. So once you put it on the top table and drive it with a strategy, then ownership is clear and execution steps are also very clear. One of the things Mr. George said, you have a committee for this and a committee for that. I'd just like to share. In Nuvoco, what we did was, we made it a company strategic action. I think Mr. George mentioned it earlier also. I was tempted to interject. We gave it a name, code name, this called Protect Your Planet, or Protect Our Planet. The program was called POP. And every functional area, be it admin, they had to ensure that no water was being procured in plastic bottles. The company was reducing and now to near zero of paper for printing. So the agenda was set at the top, strategy was clarified, it was put on the top corporate strategic agenda map with a project name, and every function in the organization sat and said, how do I relate to POP as a CSA? How does it become my functional strategic action or an FSA? We found that change the mindset. We are a cement company, so
carbon footprint, there are a set of people who worry. There is definite action taking place. But today, Nuvoco has 457 the industry. The India average is somewhere like 510, 511.
Right.
The global average is something like 5 year along from carbon footprint on all other things also.
Right. Okay, good. Now, from this, if we just move on to the next question, which is coming to my mind, maybe we are stepping back a little bit or whatever, just for our clarity. CSR and ESG, are they really being seen separately in corporates? Except maybe handful where Ms. Basu and George are there. But overall, if you look at the corporate board and the corporate world, is there really a clarity that CSR and ESG are two different initiatives, or there is complete confusion that if CSR is there, then why we need ESG, and if ESG is there, then why we need CSR? Ms. Basu first and then George.
Doctor, I'm actually very tempted to hear Mr. George's comment on this because
Fine,
definitely
fine.
his board experience is much
Right,
better.
right. Mr. George.
Okay.
Yeah, please.
You may like
I
to go
think,
first.
I think I can very confidently say that ESR and ESG are not confused anymore in corporate boards. It is very, very clear. To what extent they act, you don't ask me, but they never get confused. CSR is separate and ESG is separate. I am very, very clear. Very, very, no doubt on that. Okay. It's
Okay.
no,
my question is it's not you, Mr. George. Yeah. I'm saying the corporate world. I want that flavor.
Yeah. Corporate world, that awareness has come in. I think these are early days. Let us say, no, I'm just I'm not very focused in answering because that will give us a much better understanding.
Right.
Now, this actions and intentions, we have to just see. Now, I'm taking something. Europe is very much concerned about climate, ESG. They were the leaders. Okay.
Right.
Now, when the Ukraine has happened, they all said they will not take oil from Russia.
Right.
Okay. And where are they taking oil? The same oil goes through India.
Correct.
Okay. So what I am saying is public statement and actions, there has to be done. Again, Europe closed last year when I was in IMD, they had closed their power plants all. Now it has all opened. So necessity. See, I beautifully like Madhumida's statement. Commercial necessity is a major driver in this. Our priorities shift based on that. If I cannot survive for a day, all this will go. Future is something today I have to live.
Correct.
On the whole, when it is possible for us, this has to be in the mind of every individual. Whether he is in the corporate world, this is applicable to educational institutions. This is applicable to everyone who is living in this planet. You know, we should. And education is the most important thing. Rather than again bring in another angle.
No, in fact,
the corporate governance formulas coming in. This should become the most important aspect in primary education. According to me, in India, we should give priority to hygiene, promptness, and gender, respecting male and female, equality in the school and home itself. Then automatically this will come, rather than corporate world alone implementing it.
Correct. Okay. Now, I mean, if I take that as fine, that corporate world, corporate boards are very clear that ESG and CSR are two different. Okay. Where does sustainability and SDGs fit into this? Are we somehow losing track or touch with SDGs, or we are saying if I take care of ESG and sustainability, my SDG is all, we are catering to that? What is happening there?
Madhumita, are you
George.
taking your...
Yeah, so just, my pet subject, Dr. and Mr. George, I'll return to. The important thing is, where is your strategy? If the organization has a well embedded strategy, SDG is a good point to start, Doctor, because ESG is the business lens. SDG is the global development lens. Now, if the government agenda is looking at particular policy framework, incentive framework for meeting SDG goals by 2030, it is beneficial to the organization to also layer their at least the environment sustainability part of the goals to those SDGs. I'll just take it a little forward with an example. See, some of them are very clear. 5 being gender diversity. If you're the SDG awareness progresses in the community as a whole, you cannot be a caucus or a corporate which is immune to gender diversity.
Right.
In our kind of an industry, affordable energy. If government is going to drive renewable energies, and I've been a part, as Mr. George was giving an example from my example, not just a commercial dimension, but I mean, totally from an affordability dimension. So, say for our industry, something like SDG 12 about responsible production and consumption. I mean, which corporate can say, I am not connected to this SDG? So, helps to have your strategy. Then you know that your ESG is fitting into a broader sustainability agenda, and knowing that globally, global principles, government initiatives is going to support that SDG. You can definitely then make sure the link is there into what kind of help or support you can take to promote your ESG agenda. So I see a very healthy reason to link that.
Okay. Yeah, Mr. George, any thoughts?
Yeah, I agree with her. Actually, ESG is a subset of sustainability. That's the way I will put it. And ESG is the beginning. Now we will see other elements coming in. Some will be smarter. They will be ahead of the curve. Who will bring in sustainability right now? And I fully endorse Madhumita's view that unless we embed this into the whole strategy, and it has to be pronounced at every level. And the moment you bring into your strategic initiative, one big advantage is there, you can incentivize the management for the outcome also. So that, it will beautifully, it is measured, they are incentivized, and at the same time, you are achieving your overall goal in a balanced way.
But tell me one thing, I mean, if I'm not talking about the Tatas, Builders, Goenkas, or the progressive-minded corporates like you are heading, Mr. George, in most of the other corporates, in terms of their planning process, do they really start with this concept of SDG and then they say, okay, part we are catering through CSR and part through ESG? Does that kind of a structured thinking really happens?
Sorry, I'll tell you, you are compelled by regulation to get into this, even if you are not interested. The example is in our ESG reporting, you have to also see you are only choosing vendors who are complying with that. So immediately you tell your vendor, friend, unless you are getting into this, I do not know how you do this. Unless this is there, we may not be able to qualify you as a vendor. Your product is fine, your component is okay.
Right.
He will ask us immediately, I want 2 years to get in. No, I will give you 12 months. So we start the process. No, I can tell you personal experience, quite a few have worked. So what will happen? They will understand what it is, how they can implement it. And many a time, I'll take 2 more minutes to tell my own personal experience in ESG. I had this about 4 or 5 years back in MD. Mining is bad. I thought, am I really in the right business? No, I'm very openly telling my own introspection. should I get out of this? Then a deeper study, I understood aluminium, copper, nickel, okay, lithium. These are all the essential elements for the so-called wind power and we are looking at solar. These are the metals we need. So we have to mine. So what did I do personally? We said, let us give low priority to coal. Okay, within our organization. Remaining we will do. What we can do, I had a PricewaterhouseCoopers, I called them, they came and discussed, top level all discussed. But when I went to the plant, I just discussed with the employees. At the end of the discussion, from the employees came, first suggestion, we understand this, sir, please put sensors on all our water taps. Okay, so we have to conserve water, why don't we have sensors on water taps? Second, you allow us to buy only e-scooter, okay, and fund it at a special rate. And one is that let us have a solar plant on roof. See how it comes from the level. Actually, and we have done that, and finally solar power we have put because of the equipment risk. I have asked someone to put it and run it. We pay for the power, so we invest in that. So this happens. No, it is going down, Mr. Sengupta. I think you should be on some boards so that, as you said, that gap can be filled very well. No, some boards, academicians. No, really, I being also a teacher in the past, I tell you, it helps a lot to be on some of the boards, which will.
I know.
I'm very, very happy about the progress India is making in this area with all our challenges.
So tell me one thing. In fact, one of the participants also raised the question here that if we can have a mandatory CSR and CSR committee on the board, why don't we have a mandatory ESG committee also on the board?
See, these committees, I'll tell you now, the way the committees and regulations have come in, it has become so tough to manage. See, now let me go to the other side of the board governance side. The board, many a time, this is again another serious challenge for governance. Most of the companies or a large number of companies think board's job, including the directors, is compliance, that regulations have been met. Compliance. According to me, that is the minimum that the board has to do. An effective board is one which adds value. Which adds value, as Madhumita mentioned, in terms of co-creating strategy with the top management, monitoring it, look at the risk, and it has to be dialogue in the board meeting. It is not PowerPoint presentation. It has to be dialogue. Even in a board meeting with the kind of regulations coming in, very limited time to be available for this. So I would recommend a modification to some of your colleagues' suggestion. Form a compliance committee. Put a director who is extremely scared of non-compliance as the committee chair. So he will go through in the previous 2-3 days and tell everything is fine. Once he tells fine, we can sleep and we can spend more time on others. Other than adding so many committees, and the problem is these committees are a limited number of members. No? The effectiveness is that committee report is discussed in the board and action is taken. So I won't recommend too many committees.
Great. Okay. Let's go to a little different angle. ESG and finance. Two basic questions. ESG and finance. I've got two basic questions. Point one. Does good ESG lead to improved financial performance? This is one issue. And does good ESG lead to better stock prices? Both are related. But I leave that. I start with Mr. George because you can really address this.
Okay. So I say yes to both. Okay. Yes to both. Now, I have mentioned in the previous earlier point itself that there are specific financial instruments coming to do ESG initiatives. So the zero coupon bonds and things like that for solar wind energy, that itself will be a very good motivator for implementing this. Apart from that, there is something called a governance premium to all corporates. You look at some of the corporates' financial numbers and look at the correlation with the stock prices. Some are distinctly separate. Okay. And sometimes during my last 20 years on various boards,
correct.
I have asked some of the retail investors, enlightened investors, why do you give so much price to our stock? I don't see this value. Interesting answer. They say this is for the quality of governance, no manipulation of funds.
Right.
And therefore, we can park our money. So this is a governance premium. So good governance, good ESG initiatives, society will definitely value rather than that short term.
Right. So which means that which is a little long-term game in the sense that, when we say that if you are a Tata company, what rating is given is secondary. Tata name is the first rating. Correct.
Yeah.
So naturally you build up those confidence in the mind of the common people, which is a time-taking thing, right? But if you're looking from, say, a 5-year kind of a perspective, okay, which means that if you're saying that if you get into better ESG, your financial performance will be better, does it really take a long-term time frame to work on this?
It will happen only in the long term. But today investors are much more smarter than us. Please understand the kind of research that goes into by the investing community. Hundreds of Senguptas are there on the street studying everything, the lifestyle, the way you live, the way you spend, the corporate politics. No, so they know more than you yourself who are inside the company. So when that is happening, they know the crux of the issue. To my mind, though it is a medium term, this is essentially what developing trust among stakeholders. Do they trust you? Do they trust you? That's the ultimate thing. And
true.
And unfortunately, trust gallops away, but limps back very slowly. So if you do one act which adversely impact the trust of the investor, it will take years for you to regain that. 10 times more effort. Okay, so it is essentially trust. This organization is doing things in the interest of the community. Long term, it will be. They are investing into future. They are not investing.
Correct.
I believe that way. I believe that.
Right.
I can add her.
I'll just add a couple of things here. While one may not be able to directly correlate or put an arithmetical formula of ESG and stock prices, how they're moved, it's a study area. But I'll just take 2 examples. Today, look at the kind of difficulty any product complaint can get you into. Any quality issue in a food product, in an automobile, the management is bending backwards to contain the conversation that spreads in social media. Take a look at some platform like Glassdoor.
True.
You would definitely be worried if your employees were expressing dissatisfaction there. So it may not directly relate to stock prices tomorrow, but it will impact your ability to get good talent. And talent sourcing is very much a part of the S in ESG discussion. So you can't get away from it, Doctor. And I would think that more so people and managers preparing for a career 5 to 10 years down the road, this will become a part of basic general management to ensure that you move up in the organization. Every transition, I don't know whether Mr. George will agree with me, but a transition from a finance to a general management or a marketing to a general management, what will be tested out is your ESG awareness, sensitivity, ability to run an agenda. These will start mattering more and more.
Right. We will come more towards the end of the discussion. Possibly we'll need about 10-15 minutes more, but we'll come more towards the talent side, as Madhumita was mentioning. And there, let me put it in this way, that the common man, I am not saying the board members, I am saying the common man, okay, there is a perception that all this ESG talks, it is only happening in the boardroom. There is nothing much happening down the line. It is only 1% of the people in the organization, they're cracking their head and wasting their time in talking about ESG. But in day-to-day business, not much is happening. So from a student perspective, don't think much about ESG and sustainability. Look at your traditional areas of marketing, finance, HR. Okay. And this is a thought which is actually hindering even many institutions and many students, okay, to get into something which is a serious study of ESG and sustainability issues, whether studying as a subject or a specializations or whatever. When I actually introduced the course, the sustainability specialization at Modi University about 3 years back, and I spoke to at least 20 corporate heads at the level of the vice president. They are not the board members, okay? But let me tell you honestly, I mean, only 3-4 of them who were associated with something to do with ESG, they were very gung-ho. But the balance 15 to 16, everybody's view was it is a concept much ahead of time. I mean, your lifetime will go and nothing will happen. You will not continue to be in this world. So why to waste, okay, your effort and time on getting into this ESG and sustainability? There is not much of a career path into those areas. So that is a wrong decision to get into these areas as a core study for the colleges and institutions. Okay, don't get into that. So I put quite a few things at one stroke. What I first wanted to get a reaction that is ESG really a boardroom kind of a point of discussion, or ESG today has gained ground in organizations across functions and across layers? George, let's
See,
start.
I will answer this, and your experience I'll connect in a nice way.
Right.
The conversations happen at boardroom level, and the strategy co-creation happens there with the top management. So, and aligning it with the strategy, incentivization, all this happens at that level.
Right.
Lower down, the impact of that they will experience, but they will not hear the word too much about this, etc. Many of the employees may not even look at the annual report, ESG reports part itself. Having, how many of us look at that? So
right.
It is felt, it is not seen. Up to me, it is felt. It is top driven, it is felt, it is not seen in all corporate, in good corporates. Not all it has come. Some will come because of the regulation. Some will be behind, some will be ahead. Those who are ahead will reap the dividends. Okay. To me, from the academic side, being a teacher also, management.
Right. Yeah.
I would not an exclusive, sustainability course may not be, and as somebody said, it may be ahead of time. But I would definitely prefer a 2-year MBA or PGDM course with a module on ESG to one which is not having that.
Okay.
So I will definitely, because whichever department they are going, whichever function they are going, they should know this. This is a part of the DNA of the human being. So when you specialize and a sustainability specialized MBA graduate comes in,
Correct.
which department he will go in unless you have a sustainability officer, which may be from the organization. So my recommendation, if I may say so, is to have definitely an sustainability module as one of the modules and it's compulsory one in a 2-year PGDM.
So which means that what we are trying to say that sustainability, ESG cannot be seen as a career path.
Exactly.
It is embedded in functions.
Exactly, it is embedded. That's what I feel, unless Madhumita has a different view.
Yeah, Madhumita.
It's important for all careers going forward. It is not important for a career path in itself.
Correct, correct.
If I
Okay.
could summarize. But having said that, Doctor, where does one need to start this sustainability awareness ASAP? There is a
Right.
large pool of talent coming from various functional areas resting in our corporate houses.
Right.
It is important that the leadership understands the importance of putting this middle management level through good programs on ESG, because again, coming back to what I said, you will have to find the cause. Either
Right.
government will drive you, or if your people are well trained and the ESG mindset is in it, in the organization, they will think of cost effective ways to bring environment to the forefront in the product, in the manufacturing process. You will also need to build a lot of collaborative talent in the organization. Going forward,
Right.
driving your ESG agenda will need a lot of collaborative working with local communities. Simple thing for a cement industry like us, sourcing municipal waste.
Right. Yeah, I think we have lost Madhumita. Maybe we can wait for 30
we need
seconds.
to talk to
Yeah,
agencies.
yeah, she's back. Yeah.
Yeah, am I back? Yeah. So I was
Yeah.
just summarizing with an example to source municipal waste in a cement industry. We need to talk. We need to engage with local agencies. So there is a lot of need for this sustainability awareness, education, the why and what of it within the middle management's resting across organizations. That's a huge talent gap, which is waiting for ask there.
Okay. So finally, what steps do you think that corporates can take in terms of popularizing ESG and sustainability courses at the business school, or for that matter, in any professional school? Because it is not just from business school that people are getting to the business world. Do you think that the corporates need to take a much more proactive step in terms of reaching out to institutions? Because at the end of the day, like you source your raw materials, and you are worried about sustainable supply chain. Your talent is also a kind of a raw material for you. And until you have a talent pipeline which is ESG trained, the future sustainability initiatives of the corporates maybe are at a crossroad, in the sense that strategy is there, but who is going to make sure that it is put into practice? So do you think that it will actually require the corporates to possibly, do a more active talking with the institutions? Because institutions on their own, many of the time, they do not want to change, or they feel, because what happens is that many of the time the industry interface really happens at the entry point. And when the campus hiring things are coming to the campus, they may not talk about ESG, because ESG, even to the campus hiring team, may not be making much of a sense. I think so. Mr. George, since you are also on the both sides, you go to so many business school and the corporates. What is your view there?
My view is, see, a very effective way of intervention can be under CSR. The government can stipulate that X percentage should go to educational institutions for sustainability efforts. Simple.
Okay.
The moment that comes in through regulation, then what will happen immediately? They have to spend this on educational institution. It need not be management itself. It can be
Right. Anybody, correct.
So then we can have a kind of framework will make the institution eligible, and how the funding should go. And there should be a mechanism to do the impact study. What is the benefit? How many courses they done? This will happen. The student may not work in the corporate. They may become an entrepreneur. They may become a professional. Whatever it is, that awareness we create at the entry point. I think this would be the one very nice method of educational institutions getting initiatives through corporates.
Lovely. I think Mr. George has a knack of making complicated, complex things so simple. And I think this suggestion that you came out with so nicely, I think it tackles lots of this challenge in a big way. Yeah, Ms. Basu, your final comment on this?
What Mr. George said, you need a cause to drive action. And I think he's got to the crux of the cause. I'll just round it up by saying, I'm sharing an example, Today, IIT Delhi is working with the cement industry for a next generation, high sustainability, lowest carbon footprint product. So it's an innovation journey.
Right.
And it's a live case of how industry and academia are collaborating for a specific objective. More and more of these kind of projects, success, and of course, a framework. And Mr. George is giving a very easy formula for that. But this is going to accelerate, Doctor. I would only make a comment for all people viewing this program today, that what you're seeing today, you see reports and you're told 50% of companies are reviewing ESG quarterly on their in their board meetings. And you say, okay, what is 50%? You have to see the 0 to 50% movement has happened in under 10 years. And the acceleration from 50 to 70 or 80, the momentum is what we need to study. And we have to be ahead of the curve. Educational institutes have to be ahead of the curve.
Great. I think it was lovely talking to you guys, both of you. And before we close, there is one question. One of the participants has mentioned that why ESG reporting like BRSR is not being mandatory for multinationals who are not listed for their Indian operations in the Indian Stock Exchange.
Okay. No, it's a regulators. The question you should ask the regulator. How it has come, I can tell you. Because it's a directive through SEBI, So SEBI controls all listed entities. It's very simple as that. So then some multinationals will find a way out of this by being a subsidiary unlisted. They can, but this will all not work. Any multinational today, they are compelled more than us to follow this in their own homeland, and every subsidiary's balance sheets are getting consolidated, and each day regulation is looking into each operations. So we need not worry too much on that, other than the academics. That's my
point. Okay. Well, still there are many more questions which are there in mind, but I think we need to wind up today. We're already 10 minutes beyond the time slot. So thank you so much, Ms. Basu. Thank you so much, Mr. George. It was really a pleasure to discuss with you issues because we keep on reading so many things about corporate performance, but I think we really don't hear much from the boardroom directly, to really get a flavor of what is really happening at the boardroom and how the board members are thinking and working on this ESG thing. So it was really a pleasure for us to understand from both of you, get a glimpse of what is happening in the boardrooms. Thank you so much, both of you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sengupta, and nice that I could get introduced to
Madhumita Basu. Yeah, correct.
So,
thank you, Mr. George. We must take that forward.
Wish you all the best for your initiative, all kind of support.
Right. Thank you. And I request Dr. Shavita to formally close it.
Thank you all. Thank you, Madhumata ma'am, and thank you, Yotso, for sharing your experiences and thoughts on this very important topic. Yeah, most of our doubts have been cleared, but still we have more to pen down. We'll meet you shortly, hopefully, for the next show. Thank you, sir. It was a wonderful experience. Thank you, all participants.
Thank you.
All the best.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I think you both can log off, and I think me and my team might be here for a couple of minutes more. Right.